everybody, I'm Jim, and this is KLEOS. In KLEOS, you take the role of a Greek Olympian god, competing to be the patron god of this rising city's KLEOS. And what you're trying to do in KLEOS is earn glory. So we have this score track that runs up around the board, and we are all the Greek Olympians competing for glory in the eyes of Zeus, who is judging this contest. So it is a contest among the gods. We're all competing. There are take that elements. We're going to be, as you would expect from Greek gods, kind of backstabbing each other and competing for area control in the city. And the ways that you earn glory are by killing your opponent's minions, controlling key parts of the city, like the port, the theater, the market, the arena. That will get you glory at the end of each day. And also by recruiting epic heroes and monsters from the Greek islands. So you can send your minions from port out to the islands and try and get these epic heroes and monsters to join your cause and fight for you. In this case, I have Ares set up, so we'll walk through kind of how we set up, how we play, dive into the game, go through a quick turn. The contest takes place over 5 days. Each day is a round of play. So you have your day track down here with a little token of Helios pulling the sun, and at the start of each new day, we'll be moving that around. At the end of the 5th day, whoever has the most glory wins the contest and becomes a patron god of KLEOS. So to start with, we'll walk through the basic components, different pieces of the board setup. So up here we have the Greek Isles. So like I said a moment ago, that's where you'll be sending your minions to go and recruit epic heroes and monsters like the Phoenix, Perseus, Queen Marina, Pegasus, or the Lernaean Hydra. There's a whole deck of those, some awesome characters you're probably very familiar with from mythology. Then we have the Fates deck over on this far side of the board. Those are your basic tropes from Greek mythology. You'll have Amazons, you'll have hoplites, you'll have sirens, cyclops, different basic powers that all the gods can do. Cards like Ambrosia, which will let you take more of your divine powers into effect. Then we have the Zeus deck. The Zeus deck is a catch-up mechanism in the game. If at the end of any day, a player is 5 glory points behind the leader, they get one of these powerful Zeus cards, which is pretty much Zeus's penchant for bending the rules, maybe cheating a little bit. He likes to help the underdog here to make it more interesting and stop someone from getting a little bit too far ahead. Each player has their own temple, so we have this set up for a 2-player game right now. If we had a 3rd player, you would have the temple there as well. 4 players would use these 4 locations, and 5 would use each of the temples. In this case, I am playing as Ares. You'll see that I have my playmat here, my player board, which has spaces for your minions and also a space for your champion. Each god has their own champion. It's unique to them. Athena, you'll see we have Heracles set up on the board here. And for me, playing as Ares, I have Leonidas. So if you've seen 300, you'll be very familiar with Leonidas. You'll also see that each god has their own meeples. These will represent your minions on the board. So how do we set up? Each god has their own card that tells you your starting hand, as well as your champion. So the first thing we're going to do is put Leonidas onto our temple. We're going to take our Leonidas champion card, and we're going to place that right onto the playmat in the champion location. Second thing we'll do is we'll take our starting divine cards. So in this case, it's going to be Aura of Phobos and Deimos, and Kaidoimos, Spirit of Battle. Those will always start in your starting hand. It's a major part of your strategy. Really important cards that you want to think about how you're going to play at the start of the game. Each god has their own starting hand, different divine cards that make them different. They also have their own divine deck, which you'll be drawing cards from throughout the game. So you have your Fates cards, which make up kind of the basic tropes of mythology. Then you have your divine cards that make each god different, give a little bit of asymmetry. They're stronger than the Fates cards, so they give you a little feel of playing as that god and being powerful. And because that deck is unique to the god you're playing as, you get different variety, a lot of replayability each time you play the game. Then we'll draw 4 cards from the Fates deck. So in this case, we have the Griffin, Priest of the Olympian Gods, Ambrosia, which is great because it lets you get more divine cards, and Twist of Fate, which is important because it's going to let you re-roll dice, surprise your opponents throughout the game. Now, before we dive into kind of a sample turn, I'm going to run through the different card types, different abilities in the game. First, let's take a look at minions. The most important minion to your strategy will be your champion. You'll see each minion has a card type. In this case, this is a minion, and this is a champion hero. The special things about your champion is that most importantly, it cannot die. You're a Greek Olympian god, so if your champion would be killed, let's say Leonidas was fighting Heracles at the port, and Heracles would kill Leonidas, you say, nope, I'm a Greek Olympian god, you're going back to my temple. You save them. Now, to your opponent, they get more glory. And we'll talk through the scoring in a minute. For you, it's great because your champion's always going to be around. So we've looked at the different decks and setup of the board. The other important aspect is Hades. Whenever something dies, whenever you play a card, if it will be discarded, no matter where it came from, which deck it came from, everything goes to Hades in the end. So it's a shared discard pile. There's different interactions that could happen later in the game, and especially in some of the other content we have coming down the road. So when your champion would get killed, you send any cards attached to them to Hades, whether it's blessings or mounts or offerings, and they get sent back to your temple. Each minion could have an ability as well. So in this case for Leonidas, allied basic minions, which is a different card type, at Leonidas' location gain +1 attack and +1 defense during your action phase. So we'll come to that in a bit. And then the different stats are attack, defense with the shield, cunning with the brain, and then tactics, which is sort of supporting your allies in combat. The first stat, attack, in this case is an 8. All that is how many dice you're going to roll in combat. So let's say we had Leonidas going to battle Heracles. His attack is 8. You would roll 8 dice. I'm gonna roll on the board here. When you roll dice, any sides that are blank are failures. Any sides that have swords are successes. And anything that has this sort of lightning on Mount Olympus symbol is only a success if you have Olympus's favor, which is a mechanic we'll get into in a minute. For now, we do not have Olympus's favor. So in this case, I have rolled 4 successes. You would compare that to Heracles' defense, which is 5. Nothing would happen. I haven't killed him. I need to roll a number of successes equal to the opponent's defense in order to take them down. So that explains defense as well. That's how many successes your opponents need in order to kill your minions. Cunning is used for recruiting. So let's say I have Leonidas at the port. I can move him to one of the Greek islands. Let's say I wanted to recruit Amazon Queen Marina. I could move him there. Cunning is the number of dice I would roll to try and recruit her. In this case, the difficulty I need to get is the disposition in the upper right, which is 1. So I would only need 1 success, so I got it. So attack is how many dice you roll in combat. Defense is how many successes your opponent needs to kill your minion. Cunning is used for recruiting. It's the number of dice you roll when you want to recruit something. And tactics is how well you support your minions in combat. There are different types of minions. So Leonidas was a champion. The Centaur is basic. It's a very common type that you'll experience throughout the game. And then you'll have epics, which either come from your divine deck or from the Greek Isles. Then you have heroes and monsters. The important difference for heroes and monsters is mainly that heroes can have mounts attached to them. So you can actually attach a Centaur from your hand to a hero, which Leonidas is a hero, and he will gain the benefits on the bottom of the card. The Priests of the Olympian Gods and the Amazonian Archer both have monstrous offering. They can be sacrificed to a monster that you have in play. Let's say that we had the Griffin in play, and you would pretty much slide them under your playmat, and they would get the bonus associated with the monstrous offering, which in this case is +1 defense. Each minion can have 1 mount or offering attached and get the benefits, and you can, if you want to, at some point throughout the game, swap them out. So let's say you no longer wanted the Priests of the Olympian Gods as the offering. You can send that to Hades, and you can instead use the Amazonian Archer to get +3 attack. So a lot of the strategy in the game comes from whether you want to play minions on the board or use them as mounts or offerings to boost your other minions. Other card types, we have Act of the Gods, which are like spells. They'll give you little bonuses. For instance, Ambrosia lets you draw 1 card from your divine deck. Twist of Fate has a keyword reaction, which means it can be played anytime that the card allows you to. So in this case, you would play this card immediately after dice are rolled. So anytime dice are rolled, you can play this from your hand and make people re-roll those dice. You're an Olympian God. You can curse your opponent's minions, but you cannot curse their champion because the champion is protected. So you would put this attached to a minion, and in this case, whenever anyone attacked that minion, they would get +2 attack, whether it's you or your opponents, so you can try and get rid of problematic enemies on the board. One very important mechanic is Olympus's favor. This is drawing Zeus's attention to what you're doing. Only 1 minion in the game can have this at a time. So each god will have a card in their divine deck that gives them Olympus's favor. In this case for Ares, it's Olympian Warcry, which lets you give Olympus's favor to one of your minions and move them to the arena. So let's say that I used Olympian Warcry on Leonidas. He would gain Olympus's favor, so I would put this token onto the card. And now any dice that Leonidas rolls for any reason are considered godly. So now he would succeed on that lightning bolt symbol on the dice. He has a 50% chance of succeeding instead of a 33% chance, so much better odds when you're rolling a lot of dice, because this is a dice chucking game. It makes a huge difference in combat. It's very powerful. Now, if someone else was to gain Olympus's favor, they would take that away from Leonidas, put it on their minion, and it makes for a really exciting dynamic as you're going through combat, and you want to try and keep that away from your opponents. So let's say I'm the one making the attack. Now this is ancient combat, right? Close quarters, we're going at it. So even if I'm the one making the attack action, my opponent is going to get a chance to retaliate. Because even if I hit them, they're still swinging at me. Leonidas is making the attack. We're going to roll 1 dice for every point he has in his attack, which is 8. In In this case, that is a terrible roll because I needed 5 successes to take out Heracles. I only got 2. Nothing happens. Heracles just bats it away with his club. Now, because like I said, this is ancient Greek combat, Heracles is swinging at me. And Heracles has an ability where his attack checks are always godly because he is the son of Zeus. So Heracles only has 7 attack, but even though he doesn't have Olympus's favor, his attack checks are always godly. He's always going to succeed on that lightning bolt. In this case, he rolls 4 successes, still not enough to take out Leonidas. Now those odds might seem pretty low. The big part of the combat system in KLEOS is using your tactics, your allies to support you in battle. So instead of just having Leonidas fight Heracles at this location, now Leonidas has some friends. An Amazonian archer and Kaidoimos Spirit of Battle are there with him. So this is where we come into that bottom stat with the map there, tactics. So the tactics score is how much support these minions can give to another ally they have in combat. So in this case, Amazonian archer has 2, Kaidoimos has 3, but at the same location as Leonidas, who's going to attack Heracles, you add those values onto Leonidas' attack. So in this combat, Leonidas will roll 8 dice plus 5 for the support that he's getting from his allies. So we're going to roll these 13 dice. He still needs 5 successes to take out Leonidas. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got it. So in this case, Heracles is defeated. He is Athena's champion, so he's not killed, but he gets sent back to Athena's temple, and I would gain 2 glory for killing a champion. Now, the way that glory works with combat, you take out an opponent's champion, you get 2 glory. You kill any of their other minions, you get 1. And now we'll do one other sample combat, where instead of fighting Heracles, Leonidas is fighting an opposing Amazonian archer. So in this case, Leonidas will be rolling 11 dice, and he rolled 5 successes. This allows us to explain another mechanic called slaughter. If you're attacking first, and you're attacking an opposing minion, and you roll 3 successes more than their defense, they are instantly killed. They don't get to retaliate, they go straight to Hades. You get 1 extra glory, so instead of 1 you would get 2, and your minion immediately attracts the Eye of Zeus, and you get Olympus's favor. So if you get an opportunity to take out a weak minion like that, and you're rolling a lot of dice, it's a huge advantage to do so. If you're attacking first in combat, if you're making your attack action, and you roll 3 successes more than the opponent's defense, that minion is slaughtered. It's a huge advantage. You get 1 extra glory. Opposing minion goes straight to Hades. It doesn't get to retaliate against you, so you have no chance of losing your minion. And also you attract the Eye of Zeus because you've done something awesome. So you get Olympus's favor immediately, which as stated earlier, lets you roll godly dice and succeed on the lightning bolt as well as the normal successes. So the goal of the game is to get as much glory as you can in the 5 days. There are 3 different ways to get glory. 1 is by controlling key parts of the city, so area control. If at the end of any day, you have the most minions at a location, you get the amount of glory shown on the board. So in this case, if the day ended, I would gain 2 glory for controlling the port. Let's say we both had a minion on that location, neither one of us would get the glory. It's all or nothing. That said, champions are worth more than normal minions. So if the situation was like this, and you had a regular minion, your opponent had Heracles, their champion, your opponent would get all of the glory. The other way that you get glory is through combat. If you kill an opponent's minion, you get 1 glory. If you defeat their champion, you get 2 glory. And if you slaughter in combat, which we'll explain later, you get 1 additional glory. And then lastly is recruiting minions in the Greek Isles. If you successfully recruit a minion, you get 1 glory, as well as having that awesomely powerful minion join your forces and help you in future rounds. The way that the game runs, you start off with Daybreak, where you would draw a card from your Divine deck, and it's kind of like a reset phase. So if at any point you had Greek Isles that were empty, there were no minions there were no cards there, you would put a new card from the Epic Minion deck onto that island. Also, if anyone's 5 points behind the leader, they would get a very powerful Zeus card, and you move the day track to the next phase. Then you go into your play phase. So whoever is the first player will take their play phase first. All that you do during your play phase is play cards from your hand. This would basically be our starting hand here. We have Kaidoimos, Orophobos, and Deimos, Harbingers of War, a couple of minions, and a couple of other Act of the Gods. So in my play phase, all I'm going to do is put minions into play, which would mean putting them onto your play board. And whenever you put a minion in play, you put their corresponding hoplite meeple onto the board. You always start the game with your champion in play. And then I can play the cards in my hand. So Ambrosia, I could play this, which means I would send it to Hades. It allows me to draw 1 card from my Divine deck. So you can see, kind of keep your round going. Some of these minions will have different abilities, like we said earlier. So the Griffin, I could either put into play and have it fly around and kind of mess with my enemies, or I can have it as a mount for Leonidas. He would now gain Swift, which lets him move more quickly around the board, and he gets +1 attack because flying around on a Griffin is pretty awesome. Priest of the Olympian Gods has a couple of different abilities. I could have used it as an offering to a monster, or during your play phase, you may discard it to give Olympus's favor to a minion you control. So during this phase, you could also play Blessings, Act of the Gods, you can curse your opponent's minions, and then you'll have cards that say Reaction. Those are the only cards you can play during other phases of the game. Each player will go around taking their play phase, so I would take mine, play would move around the table, and then once it came back to me, it would now be my action phase. So during my action phase, what I can do is move my minions on the board, let them act. I'm a Greek Olympian god, these are just the mortals that are serving me, so I can send them out to do my bidding. There are only 3 actions you can take during the action phase. It's move, attack, and recruit. If your minions don't have swift, when they move, they're just gonna move 1 space. During your action phase, each minion can take 2 actions. You'll see on your player board that there are little spaces for that. You can take your actions in any order. So I can choose to move Kaidoimos, then move Priestly Olympian Gods, and that kind of plays into the strategy, especially how you're positioning during combat with that tactics bonus. So the 3 actions again are move, attack, or recruit. When you move your minion, that would be 1 action, that would be 2 actions. KLEOS is a game where you tend to kind of play king of the hill and focus in the center of the board, getting out to the Greek Isles. So everything does condense into a kind of a blood bowl in the middle of the game board. Now, the only difference is if your minion has Swift, which is this wing ability right here, which either the Griffin would have by itself because it's flying around, or if you were to use as a mount on Leonidas, it would then give him Swift and +1 attack. Now, if your minion has Swift, on its first movement action of the day, it can move 2 spaces instead of 1. So Leonidas' 2 move actions could be 1, 2, getting him to the port very quickly. Now let's talk about recruiting. So let's say I had Leonidas at the port at the start of my turn. He can take his 2 actions. I can use 1 action to move to any of these Greek Isles. So let's say I went to Pegasus's location. I have 1 action remaining. I can now try and recruit Pegasus. So to do that, I roll a number of dice equal to my cunning, which in this case is 5. And you know cunning says that little brain icon. So I will roll 5 dice to try and recruit Pegasus. And the challenge in recruiting is always the disposition in the upper right-hand corner, which for Pegasus is 1. That's the number of successes I need to successfully recruit. I rolled 3, that's a heck of a roll. We're really good friends. We're going out for a bite to eat after this. So I would get 1 glory for recruiting Pegasus, and then Pegasus would join my team. So I would put Pegasus onto my player board, put the corresponding minion onto the island with Leonidas, and now the turn you recruit a minion, it cannot act. So it would have no actions remaining, but then next turn it can go around and start attacking or trying to recruit other things. You would get the glory. And the very cool thing about Pegasus is that you can either put it as a minion on your board, or it has a special ability. When Pegasus would enter your play area, you may attach it to a hero you control as a heroic mount instead. So instead of having Pegasus just fly around on its own, we can actually attach Pegasus to Leonidas. And now Leonidas gains Swift and +1 to all stats, including defense, which is huge. There are very few defense buffs in the game, and when you can get them, especially on your champion, it's going to be very powerful. The challenge when recruiting differs. So Pegasus was very easy, but you'll see something like the Lernian Hydra. It's a little bit harder to convince to join you. It has a disposition of 3, and the highest in the game is 4 for some of the more godly characters, Prometheus and some others, which are really powerful and hard to get. Some gods also focus on recruiting, like Hermes is a huge part of his strategy is getting to the Greek islands and recruiting powerful epic heroes to help you. So you'll go around, everyone will take their action phases. During your action phase, we said each minion can take 2 actions. Once you're out of actions or you choose to stop, play will move to the next player. You'll go around the table. Then we move to the Dusk phase. During the Dusk phase, you can discard any number of cards from your hand. Then you're going to draw back up to 3 total cards from the Fates deck. You'll get your Divine cards at the beginning of the next day during Daybreak. If you have more than 3 cards, you have to discard down to 3 cards. Then you're going to tally points for area control. Ares would gain 1 point for controlling the market, 1 point for controlling the arena, and Athena would gain 2 points for controlling the port. And then after Dusk, you will move to the next Daybreak, remove the player token, and proceed with the next round of play. Draw 1 card from your Divine deck. Let's say this space was completely empty. You would put out a new epic minion, which in this case is the Minotaur, and proceed into another round of play. At the end of the 5th day, you see who is the player with the most glory, and they become the patron god of KLEOS. So the different gods do have some asymmetry. They do have some unique components. The most important to know is when you play as Dionysus, first, I wouldn't recommend playing as him the first time that you play KLEOS. He is the most challenging. And what he does is he doles out the wine tokens. So these are the wine tokens that go with his minions. Make sure you read the Master of Ceremonies and keep track of your wine tokens as you go. Normally, each minion can only have 1 wine token, but a lot of Dionysus' minions take advantage of imbibing quite a bit, let's say. So you'll want to keep track of that if you're going to play as Dionysus. So the last piece of combat are attacks of opportunity. If at any point you have two minions at the same location, and one goes to move off, the other gets an attack of opportunity. That's just a basic attack roll with no retaliation, and you roll their attack without any tactics benefits. So in this case, let's say that Heracles was moving off that space. Leonidas would roll 8 dice, and that would be his chance to take out Heracles without spending an action. There are no opportunity attacks from the port. That's a free movement space, so you can come and go from the port to the islands or anywhere else as you please. When you're going to spend your movement action, if you have a minion at the port, you can move them to any of the Greek islands by spending one action. And from the Greek islands, you can only go back to the port. So that's what these little dotted lines represent, the path of travel. And if you have a minion with Swift, you could always move like from the theater with the first action to a Greek isle. But again, from the Greek islands, you can only move back. Enjoy, everybody. Thank you for your time.